Welcome to the definitive UFO news show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G, where we dig into the biggest UFO headlines, the fight for disclosure, and the push for transparency. This isn't just a news show, it's a real discussion. We break down the stories, examine the possibilities, and explore the unknown answers and questions for the search of truth. No political spin, no biased narratives, just the facts, the analysis, and yes, the conversations that move the needle. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G, and it's time to dig in. It's time to jump right on into the show. So, glad to be back here on the definitive UFO news show. We actually took a break for a little bit. There's not a lot happening in the UFO community. Ergo, the title of today's show: Where are the UFOs? Where are they at? I want to know. I want to know. It's an eerie silence going on right now, and I'd love to hear from everybody to figure out. Let's ponder. Let's sit today and let's talk about it. Let's try to get to down to why it seems like the UFO subject has died. Yeah, I mean it's very strange to me, and it's definitely something that I wanted to address and talk about here tonight the on the news show tonight. Here, let me go ahead and take a look out in the audience and see who has shown up here. We do have Race Fan in the building. Race Fan, thanks for coming on in. We have Polly Rotterman. Polly Rotterman has stepped in the building. Hey, Polly, nice to see you. We have Miss Catherine Jones saying, hello, Mr. Rob G. Hello, all. Appreciate you coming in, Miss Catherine Jones. Thanks for showing up. We have Lil Cam 51 in the building saying present. Do appreciate you coming on in here tonight to the news show, the definitive UFO news show. It's been a while. You got to give me some grace here. I also said Kitty Catty Whack as well, right? Kitty Catty Whack is in the building. Definitely want to go ahead and jump right on into the show. I wonder how you guys have been doing. It's been a while. Hope you guys have all been doing well as we go ahead and get right back into business. You know, the thing with this community is, and this subject is, you cannot stay in this 365. You have to step away at some time. You have to take a breather before you actually, get overwhelmed or consumed by the subject itself. Because as you know, on this channel, we are pro humanity. We are pushing for, conversations that move the needle. This is something that I think most of us can say is very personal to us, and is something that affects us on a personal level, right? So it's that sort of energy and that sort of feeling that comes when you cover this topic. And just like with anything else that you deal with that is very personal to you in your life, sometimes you have to step back for a moment, refocus, recalibrate, and get back to business. And that's what we're doing here. There's a lot going on in the world, as we all know, and we're going to tie some of that into the show here tonight too, because I think, from what I'm feeling like there definitely is a part of this that is potentially one of the answers to where are all the UFOs? Where are they at? And we'll jump into that and a lot more here. We have Zen Zapper in the building, stepping in saying, hey, Zen Zapper, appreciate you coming on in. Magneticus Attractors saying, I was wondering if you were still alive. Yeah. I look back and all of a sudden three weeks had passed since we done the last show, almost 4 weeks. But just as I explained, you cannot stay in this subject full time. You have to take a break sometimes. You have to recalibrate because, as I just said a moment ago, being that the subject is so personal to a lot of us, it can actually consume you and affect you in a way that other personal things in your life would affect you. And, that means a lot though, because it means that you really care about the narrative and where this takes humanity. And that, I'm fully engaged when it comes to that aspect of this whole thing. So it's a good thing that it can affect you like that, because if it doesn't affect you in that way, then that means you might not be in it for the right reasons, right? Or you may not be invested for the right reasons as well. As we go ahead and look back out there and see who else is there. That's Maggie M10. Hey, Maggie M10. Thanks for coming on in, saying hi, Mr. Rob and all. Do appreciate you coming on in here tonight, Maggie, as always. As yeah, we're gonna kind of just have a little bit of fun, just have a great conversation here tonight. And let me go ahead and bring up the slide here for tonight. And where are the UFOs? Where are they? Where are they? Because the skeptics. This is definitely something that the skeptics are going to have fun with, and I'm hoping that I have the correct slide here up. This system, and I swear, this system that I'm using now, it's cool in some aspects, but there definitely is a part of it that is not cool. So let me I want to go ahead and make sure I'm hoping that the correct slide has loaded up here. Yeah, see, it looks like it's the slide from the last show. Let me go ahead and do this real quick here. Otherwise, how has everyone been doing? Because that's definitely very important to what we're going to be talking about here today. I just really wanted to get back in here so I can see, just as Magnetic has just said, we thought you were, I didn't know if you were still alive, and that's kind of one of the reasons why we wanted to get in here. So, yeah, it looks like this is the old slideshow, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to bring that in for this one. So let me just take this back to the beginning, and we'll just jump into the actual conversation itself. All right. Phone number. As always, you can dial this phone number at any time. It's 856-843-3444. That's 856 the dig. If you're outside the United States, you can dial 001 first, then 856-843-3444 or 001-856-843 the dig. Want to go ahead and shout out our members. We do have memberships available on this channel. You can help make this better than it currently is, as is the goal here on the Social Dig, to raise the bar. And let me see, we have Ann Joanne the Beekeeper, Dina Lee, Maggie M10, Flat Six, Miss Catherine Jones, Cosmic Joe Chronicles, Wes Decker, W. Decker, Steel Poo 69, Polly Rodderman, Lil Camp 51, Frankie B. Fast, Timmy. Do appreciate all you guys for your support of the show. And you are the reason why we are able to keep this going in the way that we are. Definitely appreciate it. Let me see what else we have here. So as we go, I'm going to talk about some things. I'm going to go over some subjects, and I want to hopefully be able to load this slideshow into the show and kind of squeeze it in here because it kind of is important. But first thing I wanted to cover is David Grush joining Burleson, Representative Burleson, in some aspect of the UFO subject, right? So this is courtesy of News Nation. News Nation, UFO whistleblower David Grush hired to advise Rep. Burleson. Grush will not be directly involved with the White House Oversight Committee. He will advise primarily on UAPs and UFOs. His testimony sparked renewed interest in the subject. This is Joe Khalil, author, is the writer of this article. Shout out to Joe Khalil. UFO whistleblower David Grush has been hired as a senior advisor for Rep. Eric Burleson. The representative told News Nation exclusively Grush's role will mostly involve advising on issues related to unexplained anomalous phenomena, UAP, more commonly known as UFOs, and will be hired for a 4-month period initially. Grush received national attention after he claimed the Pentagon is operating a secret UAP retrieval program that has been kept hidden from lawmakers as well as the public. His claim sparked interest in UFOs and kicked off congressional hearings on the subject. Other whistleblowers also came forward with claims ranging from retrieval programs to allegations that the government has recovered not just technology from UAPs, but also biological remains of non-human origin. The Pentagon has repeatedly denied the existence of any such programs and has said there is no reason to believe UAPs are extraterrestrial in nature. However, a bipartisan group of lawmakers has been vocal in pressing for more transparency. In his role, Grush will not work directly with the House Oversight Committee. After a request for him to be hired as committee staff, the committee rejected the proposal because of Grush's high profile in the press and on social media. Grush will only advise Burleson, who is a member of both the UAP task force and the committee. The House Ethics Committee approved his hiring. So, how do you guys feel about that? There's a couple ways we could go with that, right? It's good, obviously, that being that if Rush is everything that we believe him to be, as far as if we take him at face value on the claims of having firsthand knowledge or secondhand knowledge, depending on how you want to look at it, of of crash retrievals and the fact that we have retrieved also biologics, and it's good to have somebody in that corner advising you. But when do you get to the point where enough is has been enough, right? As far as the information that whistleblowers are presented, it would appear to me that at this point the Congress should have more than enough information than they need to go forward with at least knocking on the door of some of these, contractors, wherever these craft are being held. I'm sure at this point they have names of contractors. I'm pretty sure they know the locations. So it's like, how many more committees do you need? How many more conversations do you have to have before you get to a point where it's enough, right? How many more whistleblowers is it going to take? It was the old saying. Uh, how many people does it take to screw in the light bulb? How many hands do you need to do that? Right? You got to get to a point to where you have enough information, and now you go and use that information and go and sort out and find out where these programs are. This is the stage that we should be in right now, instead of just still at this point trying to add people to advisory boards and doing things of this nature. I think if you take just David Grush, and then you take the testimony from even Jake Barber, right? Which a lot of people still trying to vet Jake Barber at this point. You gotta at some point feel like, okay, we have enough information. Let's move forward. Let's go knock on the doors of some of these contractors. Let's expose the fact what these the claims that have been made by these whistleblowers are in fact true, instead of leaving everything in limbo. Because I feel like, when you have these whistleblowers coming out, but then you haven't used the information to go validate the claims, then you in fact make the whistleblowers themselves look suspect, because it's like, oh, this should be the smoking gun evidence or information for you to kind of get to where you need to go, and you're not getting there. So it's like, what's the deal there? What's the deal there? Why haven't we taken that final step at this point in order to uncover and kind of point out what it is that these representatives are being told? That's one of the things that kind of bugging me with that. And one of the reasons why, when Representative Anna Paulina Luna, came out and she announced this transparency committee that they just kind of put together, is like, why another committee? Why are we still at the stage of putting committees together? Like, we have it all. We have everything that we need. So that's one thing that bothers me. One thing that I'm not too okay with, as far as this goes. And it kind of goes back to the question of today's show, like, where are the UFOs? Where are we at? Why is the UFO community so silent? And let me take a step back here, because I know some people have just come in. And let me see here. We have Amy WC. Amy WC has stepped in. Thanks for coming in, Amy WC. And I hope this is resonating with you because it's mind blowing where we're at with this. Tim James in the building. Mr. Rob G, what's up? Hey, Tim James. Thanks for coming on in. Thanks for dropping by. We do appreciate it. As we go ahead and get ready. And I really want to make sure that I can get this slideshow up because it kind of illustrates some of the things that we're talking about. So while I do that, we'll continue talking about this. How do you guys feel about that? Don't you feel like we should be further than we are as far as, the information that has been presented? Like, what else would you need to know? What else would you need to know? I think Jake Barber, if all turns out to be, true with Jake Barber, because there's one thing we can't do is say for 100% that these guys know everything that they're talking about. Because I believe we talked about on a previous show that nothing is 100%, right? So if nothing is 100%, that which I can agree with, then that means we can say that when skeptics come into this conversation, like they surely will with anything that comes out on this subject, and say, you know, 100% of these guys that are coming out are lying. We understand that nothing is 100%, so that can't be a true statement. But then if you flip it on the other side, as we, back up some of these guys, we could also say that 100% of these whistleblowers likely aren't telling the truth, right? So we know that there's got to be some out there that may be embellishing or over embellishing their roles in some of the things that they've done. And I think that's just the facts of it. So just being fair on both sides of this. But I think that if we can validate the stories that have come from Jake Barber, if we can kind of do that, or take the nuggets that are true, whatever parts may be true about what he has said. If he was a helicopter pilot for a contractor and he's spoken to Congress at all in any of this, then we can say that he has probably told them the contractor that he worked for, so the names of those contractors would be known, which means that you then know where these things are being held. So if you know all that information, then what's next? What do you do next? What do you do next? That's the question that we have here, and I would love to know how you guys feel about it as I go ahead and try to get this slideshow sent over. It's the only thing about this program that I'm using that I just don't like. It's not it's not up to the standard, and I might have to switch back, unfortunately, to a previous program. Hopefully, I don't have to do that because I really like it, but we'll see. So, looking out there, yeah, Maggie M10. Maybe making committees or just buying time stalling. I think that's definitely what it is. It's got to be because, what else if you have all the information and you're not acting on it, at least as far as we know, they're not acting on it. I would hope that behind the scenes and just information we're not privy to is that they have gone to some of these contractors. That's the next big news story is okay, would you have this information? What did you do with it? So, and maybe that is some of the questions that need to be posed to some of these Congress members at this point. Because yes, they come out, they're willing to do these interviews when it comes to the subject. So I would like to know, and if we could have someone that's able to pose a question, or even if we could get an interview with one of these representatives. It seems like Tim Burchett does a lot of interviews. If we can get a word from any of them just to see, hey, what have you guys done with this information? Have you reached out to one of these contractors? Have you knocked on the door yet? And if you haven't, are you at least watching these contractors to make sure they don't move the material that is being claimed to be at some of these installations? Are you at least doing that? Hopefully so. Hopefully they're at least watching them. But then even if we were the ones that had the information, we would be able to kind of keep an eye on that, right? So that's why it's so important that that information gets out there. Um, and I can't wait until that happens. Okay, let me I'm gonna try to. Oh no no no, Lord, moving too fast, moving too fast. Let me see here. Yeah, but I'm gonna go ahead and see what you guys think about that. That is insane. I just archived it. Give me just a second, guys, as we'll jump right back into this here. All right, let me see what people in the chat are talking about here. Tim James, not sure if I would believe them, some of them, even if they had their tongues notarized. That is hilarious, Tim James. That is true, though. It's very, very true. Let's see. Gray Owl in the building. Word up, Romeo Gamma, aka Rob G. Gray Owl, thanks for coming in. We do appreciate you showing on up here tonight. And I just think the conversation has to move forward. And I have some of this laid out. We're going to actually cover this here in just a moment on why this may be. Kai Schneider, thanks for coming on in. Rob G, how you doing? Hi, Kai. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate you showing up here tonight. As we are back, we're back in the building, guys, and as I said earlier, after you kind of decompress and step away from the subject for a moment, it kind of, especially in a time where information or news as far as UFOs go is pretty much in like a lull. You kind of have new vision or new perspective on where we're at instead of looking at it as, because for a moment there it was really kind of depressing, like, okay, where are the UFOs? But I think as we always talk, there is always something you can take away, some silver lining to this. And that's kind of what we'll end up doing, or how we'll frame that here tonight. And okay, so we have the slide here, and I'm going to attempt to upload this, and it may do something to the stream here. But go ahead and keep talking here, because I'm reading your messages, which are great. Maggie M10, I would imagine anyone who is honest would worry about dropping a truth bomb without irrefutable proof. Well, that's kind of where we're at, as far as, the whistleblowers aren't going to be able to bring that proof unless they smuggle something out. But if Congress is acting on the face of this like they are advocates for UFO disclosure and transparency, then they should be leading the charge as far as taking us to the next step in where we are in this conversation. They should be the ones that are, stepping to the forefront and taking that next step that most of us can't take. The whistleblowers can't, take us any further than they've taken us by giving information. Um, but the Congress is supposed to take that information and then act on it, not just kind of take the information and kind of just say, okay, let's form a committee. Let's let's kind of just yank people's chains a little bit more. And that's kind of what is going on here. As I get this set up here, give me just a moment, guys. And I just really want to know how you feel about that, because as I said before, I took this little break here on the channel, took a few weeks out. I was to a frustration point that was just I couldn't take it, right? And I'm just looking around and I'm like, there's definitely more. We should be further than we are, especially with the whole drone situation. Everything that had led up or started this year, the way the year ended, the way drones were in the news, and the government was obviously showing that they didn't know what to do about the situation, and how to kind of approach this for the public. We were at a moment where we should have been able to kind of push this further across the line. And it feels like that there was definitely the attempt to kind of put the toothpaste back in the tube, as people would say. And I just, I didn't feel really good about that. So give me just a second here. Uh, okay, maybe this is it. All right. Yeah, so that's pretty much what we're going to be looking at and talking about. I actually have a couple other stories I want to go into as well. We're going to talk about there was a release of a new craft here, military craft, which I'm pretty sure most of you know, which was the F-47. So we'll go ahead and we'll talk about that plus a lot more. All right, let me check this slide here. I just want to make sure. Okay, this is it. All right. We are almost there, guys. Give me just another second here while I get this together. Live on the air, you guys. Okay, and I'm actually editing this live, guys. Give me just a second here. Okay, let me check, double check. I think this is the slideshow I needed up here, guys. So, yeah. Okay, so I think we're good here. All right. All right, good, good. Okay, good. So we got the slideshow up. All right, let me get back to your comments here. And let's see. Ray L. Hey, Romeo G. or Rob G. Some of us figured out a great deal about certain variants of these X ray cats. Uh, let's see. I mean, some of us citizens on our own, sans feds. All right. Let's see. Tim James saying, I'd love to be a fly on the wall to see if there's a battle happening between Congress and contractors. And that's the true fact, Tim James. I would hope, I would really hope. But the thing is how do we find out? How do we get that answer? I guess the only thing we can do for now is to present that question to Congress. Like next time someone gets to interview someone, they present that question. Like, what have you talked to contractors? And is there, anything going on? Because look, they were able to tell us about a time when they went down to, I think, Florida to try to get access to some information and they were stonewalled, if everyone remembers that conversation. So they were able to tell us that. So I would think then they should be able to at least tell us that they have contacted these contractors or they were in that next phase of what was going on, because I don't think that I don't think that you can go ahead and set up a program or a committee focused on government transparency. And I don't remember the full name of it, but I don't think that you can go and set something like that up and then not be willing to kind of step out and talk about what you can talk about, right? Which is that you at least have reached out, that you have taken this information, you have moved on to the next stage, and we're in, you know, whatever they want, and they'll find a name for the stage, this stage that we're in. But the thing is that with us being so close, and that's the frustrating part. I think that's the part that will burn a lot of people out, is the fact that, okay, we are so close to finding out the answer. Now, for skeptics out there, that could be that, hey, we get to these contractors, we find out, hey, they don't have UFO craft, right? We knock on the doors, and we find out, hey, they really didn't have a UFO craft to begin with. They never retrieved any. Or we knock on the door and we find out, hey, yes, they have been holding these craft, attempting to reverse engineer, as has been reported all this time. So either way it goes, we get an answer, right? Which is, I think, the main thing that everyone is focused on, whether you're a skeptic or a non-skeptic. You want the answer. If you're open-minded, then you are still searching for an answer. If you're closed-minded, then you have come to your own conclusion. Therefore, you don't really, this doesn't apply to you. Um, but yeah, I agree. I would love to be a fly on the wall as well, hopefully they are having those conversations. Let's see. Gray Owl, and to coin a phrase, if the gray owl hypothesis range across other subcategories of the para, which I know they do in some areas such as cribbies, then these caddis are not what people think. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cats. These cats are not what people think. There's a lot to figure out here. Let's see. Maggie M10, I think Congress is being barred, or there is something really going on behind the scenes, something bigger or massive corruption or something like that. I don't know though. I think it's probably the latter there, massive corruption, Maggie, because once again, how can you have the information and then not take it that final step across the finish line? What would prevent you from doing that? Either you're being blocked from doing that, which if you were able to talk about being blocked from getting other information pertaining to UFOs at an earlier time, then you should be able to kind of allude to the same thing now. So it's either an unwillingness for the Congress to take it that next step, and they just are presenting themselves as being advocates for transparency, um, or it's going to be some of the things that we're going to talk about here in just a moment. But and this kind of is the main part of topic of what we're going to talk about. So we'll come back to this in just a moment, and we'll kind of finish this conversation here. Let's see. Let me make sure. Let me see if you have anything else out there to add to this. Let's see. Um, mm, mm, mm. Gray Owl, the human dynamic. in all this is where it gets ugly. It's within the hearts of men where monsters lurk, and this skewed version of reality where we trust not our fellow man. Okay, I hear you, Great Al. I definitely do. And all right, so let me go ahead and get to just the other piece real quick because we're going to actually, this is still the main topic and kind of this Grush thing. His involvement is kind of what is starting this conversation for us. But I did want to cover this real quick before we jump back into the this main part of the conversation, and that is recently the F-47 was announced and it was shown off, made by Boeing. And okay, right? So we talk about black budget, we talk about secret craft that are being tested. Apparently, this has been tested for the last 5 years. And here's kind of the things that stood out to me, right? So obviously, there are multiple contractors that have designed multiple craft that have eventually come out and seen the light of day. Some haven't, but we still have some ideas of the ones that hadn't come out as well. And we kind of covered this on a previous show as well. Is the fact that a lot of people will want to point fingers and say that they saw that the Tic Tac that was reported by Captain David Fravor back in the incident that happened in 2004 at the USS Nimitz, that craft was ours. There's a lot of people, more people than you would think out there that would say that Tic Tac was ours, and we were testing it out on our own military because that's a cool thing to do and unannounced, and we kind of just did that, right? And the same thing kind of ties into the drones that we had just witnessed here that are still technically out there and still showing up, and just the idea is that okay, these are government craft and we're just testing them on ourselves to see if we're ready for X, Y, and Z. But common sense, right? Common sense is a thing we talk about all the time. Common sense is a God-given gift. It's the thing that we're all born with. It's one of the senses and things that I like to call superpowers, one of our superpowers. And common sense, I think, answers a lot of questions, right? It's not just there, to not solve a problem. Common sense is there to kind of get you through a lot of stuff that you encounter during your life. And I think common sense would tell us that if you look historically, which is another thing we talk about, anything that we look at in the present or the future, a good reference, to understand what we may encounter or are currently encountering is by looking historically at historical data. And historical data says that there hasn't been times where we have sat there and just tested secret craft on the military without someone knowing what was going on, right? Or that we would parade top secret, craft in front of the public in the world. We have never done that historically. So there is no precedent for us to start doing that. And there is no reason why there should be even a group of people who would believe that that is something that is currently happening or something that we would ever do. This craft right here, the F-47, had not, as far as, and we've talked to like folks like Jim Goodall, who uh was a person that was with the group, back in the 80s, 90s, and I forget their name at the moment, forgive me, but they had a group of individuals who would go out and sniff out these top secret craft. They knew where to go, they knew where to look in order to uncover things like the F-117, the Nighthawk, the stealth fighter, the original stealth fighter. So they were able to kind of capture pictures of those before it was actually announced. They had a guy in their group who actually created a die-cast model of what this craft looked like before it was ever announced. And so there are people out there who may know where to go to maybe spot some of these things, but there was never a time where these things have been paraded, for the whole world to see. And for anyone to think that that is a thing, that we would actually do that, I don't know where you're getting this from. And it's just, you're not weighing it against things that have happened before. These are just things that you're feeling, right? And I think that's not the way, when we trying to go down a logical thought path, I don't think that's anything that follows logic, right? So to go even a little bit further, there's the argument that, hey, the things that we release and we're working on, they've been working on these things for 20, 30 years, and then they finally come out 20, 30 years later, right? Or they get scrapped, right? And that's the whole idea. So you have to ask yourself, right? When we talk about that, we've only been flying craft, period. We took the first flight in the early 1900s. I don't want to get the date wrong. And it was like 1901, 2, 3, somewhere in there with the Wright brothers. And it was like a 10, 15-second flight. So, okay, you go from then, you go to now, we're going to give it about 120 years. 120 years of humans getting in something that lifted them off the ground, besides hot air balloons. We're not talking about that. But craft that used lift as wings, fixed wing craft to get us off the ground. And so you think, you are telling me that within that 120-year period, when you look at the whole time humans have been around this planet, within the last 120 years, we took our first 15-second flight, and we're already at antigravitics and anti-gravity craft, like the Tic Tac that was seen in 2004, which would have only been 100 years after the first manned flight. So you're telling me that within that 100-year period, that we discovered and were able to reverse engineer, human beings were able to reverse engineer anti-gravity craft. So the thing that goes against that, right? Because yeah, you can say things are possible. They've retrieved some of these craft, so maybe they've figured it out or understood how these things work, and then have recreated it on their own. Logically, let's look at that. Does it make sense that we would have been able to do that, and then weigh it against the things that you have seen come out, right? If these things that they're calling drones, or any example of that, a lot of them look like fixed wing craft, right? So the reason why I'm even bringing this up is because, just like we talked about on a previous show, and I think keeps getting proven with this F-47 that came out. So this is the latest craft that have been announced here, does not represent anything anti-gravitic. Let's start there. It still uses traditional means of lift, which is fixed wings, right? We have nothing that has come out at this point, and this is the latest thing to come out, that even hints towards the fact that we have anything anti-gravitic. There is no new technology put in any of these craft. We just had the B-21 come out recently as well, and then this. And I put this up when we did a show previously, which I'll bring the slide up here. And this basically, what this did was, it just showed the design language of craft that we have been building secretly over the last, let's say, 70 years. So so let's look at this. We have the bird. Okay, let's start with the SR-71 Blackbird, and we had other craft before this, but I was focusing in mainly on design language, which is more of an triangular shaped sort of craft with sharp angles and things of that nature, right? Started with the SR-71, and you can look at every iteration of things that come out, except for the Aurora, which was rumored to have been being worked on. Some people say they have images of what that craft looked like. And then this TR-3B, which that has to lean into antigravitics, which I just don't feel like we've done. So we won't really go there, but just to show you that even in that instance, all of these craft over the years, these RQ-180, RQ-170, which are just unmanned drones, these all take the same design language, and is more of an evolutionary situation from SR 71, which is 70 years ago when they started test flying those, all the way up to what we have just released today, which is once again the F-47, whatever they're going to call this thing, the F-47 jet is what we'll call it right now. But just another evolution of the same design language, right? So there is nothing there, and the reason why I'm even saying this is because I think there are so many people who lean on the, hey, we've built anti-gravity craft without any evidence of that being the case. There's nothing that has been shown or released or done that even hints at the fact that we have recreated anti-gravitic craft. There's just a lot of people that feel like we have, but if we look at what we're really talking about here, we're talking about, yes, we build craft, and I just showed you a list of the ones that have come out. Yes, we understand that these extraterrestrials are coming here in craft also. The craft they're coming in are very different than the ones that we are creating. The craft that they are coming in exhibit characteristics of anti-gravitics and other technologies that we don't understand. So we have two buckets of craft that are being seen in the sky. Everything that the extraterrestrials have shown hint at anti-gravitics and some wild technologies. Everything that we have built and shown hint at using traditional means of lift and maybe some variations of propulsion depending on what you want to believe, but nothing that even hints at us building something that lean into anti-gravitics. So I say that to say, as more time goes on and more secret craft get uncovered or released to the public, to be shown to the public, if none of them are showing any characteristics of this magical anti-gravitic technology that we're supposedly have reverse engineered, then I think we could probably put that conversation to bed, that we have reverse engineered alien craft, or that we have built a craft that is capable of anti-gravitics. As more time goes on and there's no proof of that being the case, even with China releasing their latest fighter, and just the things that are on the forefront of technology, where these things go for the next 30 years, right? Whatever these things are they release, they use them usually for around 20 years before they retire them. And there's just nothing there. So do we go another 20 years just to see that they've released another fixed wing craft to finally close the case on the fact that human beings have created anti-gravitic craft? That being said, the things that we see in the sky that are anti-gravitic in nature are likely UFOs not from here, versus anything that you might consider as something that the government built. And I think we're at a point now where you could pretty much step away from that we've built anti-gravitics conversation, right? And I think it's very important, because when we try to have these discussions about what it is that we're seeing in the sky, there are way too many people who still feel like human beings have built something like this. And I think that takes away from trying to determine or decipher what it is that we're actually looking at and where it might be coming from. Because if the narrative was known, if the government stepped out and said, yeah, we haven't built anything anti-gravitic, and it becomes a solidified fact that we've never built anything like that, then that clears up a lot of things for a lot of people that see things in the sky, because they're like, okay, human beings have admitted they have never built anything like that, but yet here something is exhibiting those characteristics. So it must not be from here, right? And I think that kind of clears up the conversation, right? But as long as you have people out there that will hang on the fact in their belief that we have created something like that without proof, I think kind of hurts the conversation. But I wanted to point that out because this obviously is something that happened within the last week or so. And we have talked about this before, and it kind of just furthers the conversation that we were having. And just the fact that when you look at historically, design language from the things we've released, everything seems to be an iteration of the previous thing. And these were all built by different contractors. This isn't one contractor building these these jets. So as far as technology goes, design language that human beings, are looking at as you know, um, top tier design, this is the language that we are following, not anything that looks like this, which is a which is if it'll come up here, not anything that looks like this, which is a tic tac. We haven't shown anything or seen anything that even makes us feel like we have designed anything that looks like this, right? We haven't. Truthfully, there isn't anything that and obviously we've talked about on other shows as well. This design language has been around since the 50s, things like that. So when we go back again to the time frame of human beings only being able to fly for, now 120 years at the time the Tic Tac was seen 100 years. And at the time the Tic Tacs were being reported going back to the 50s, which would have been only 30, 40 years after we took a 15-second flight, it makes it highly unlikely that we're doing anything like this. And I think it's time to separate the two and say, hey, we haven't built anything like this, so that people going forward, when they see things like that, they understand that that's likely not something, from this planet, if we want to talk about that. So, thought that was interesting, and definitely something to cover as we come back on our first show here. But here's where you're going back into the conversation we were having. Where are the UFOs? Why is the UFO community so silent right now? What is really going on as far as the movement in the community? As you have watched many shows out there, many UFO related shows, you will know that there really hasn't been a lot to report when it comes to the subject, right? We had I think, a awesome start to the year where we, ended the last year with the drone, well, with the hearings with Lou Elizondo in front of Congress. We get the drone situation a week after the hearings. That's when the drones started, and they really didn't, they went through November, they took us through December. We took a holiday break as humans do. By the time we come back, it's technically still happening. We get a new administration brought in. They give us some BS statement stating that, oh, actually the FAA was doing research on X, Y, and Z. Even though I think this may have been, if we can go back and look at it again, if we were to go back and look at that 2 month, 2.5 month period where things really were peaking as far as these drones go, I think we could probably say that it's possible that this was some sort of, maybe a contact event, a flap at the very least, right? Okay, and so we come right off of that, and then we get the Jake Barber coming out. We get this video of a egg retrieval, what looks shaped like an egg, but UFO retrieval video, which I think is gonna be very important in taking us where we go next in this conversation, and we'll kind of talk about that. But great start to the year, very compelling as far as where we were. And a lot, and we're kind of retrospecting right now, but a lot of people looked at the egg-shaped craft as something fake. And I've always said, if you were going to fake a UFO retrieval, why would you use that shape? It doesn't. So for the average person out there who thinks they're about to see a video of a UFO being retrieved, they're going to imagine a disc shaped craft, likely stuck in the dirt or kind of broken up a little bit, but still more of a disc shaped craft, because universally that image is UFO. So if you were going to try to fool the masses on something that was going to be determined or considered to be a UFO retrieval, you would go with that design language, or you would go with something that definitively says UFO. You wouldn't go with something that people are just going to immediately say is an egg, right? You wouldn't go with that if you were trying to make something that was going to fool the masses. So I think that was one thing that stood on that video being something real, or likely, very likely to be real. And then when you take that design language, if you're within the community, you know that that design language has been around forever. There have been egg shaped craft reported back with Lonnie Zamora, as we've talked about on this channel as well. And, what it led me to believe, or it made me feel that what we were witnessing was an actual retrieval, and which means that whoever was in that helicopter retrieving that object was handing that over to the contractor that they worked for, and then that was going to the contractor. So if that's the case, then we're back to Congress and why they haven't taken the information that they've been given to go to that contractor now, right? Ross Coulthard broke this story. I'm sure Ross knows more than he's given out on these news reports. So I feel like Ross might know where the location for this is, right? This wasn't a Jake Barber video. We've all come to know that. But I still feel like whoever gave the video to News Nation for it to be aired, whoever that source is, has likely divulged where that object was taken to, or at least what contractor was contracted to retrieve that object. One of the two, either one of those two information is bombshell information, and is something that can break this wide open. So, with that being said, that's the frustration, because it's like, okay, Congress, here you go, silver platter, the data that you need. What are we doing with this information again? Are we just allowing it to be shown and kind of die and kind of go away? Because what it makes me feel like is, okay, Congress then is part of this whole distraction, campaign to kind of keep us off of the trail of what actually is going on. This thing could be wrapped up right now. Like, literally, if Congress really used all of their authority and all of the powers that they do have, they could close the case one way or the other. Now, they could do it this year. So the question is, if you could, why not? And then why the committees and all this other stuff that seems to be a delay tactic or distraction to getting to that? Because we're right there. And so it kind of makes me feel like, if that's the case, then why all this silence so far? Where are the UFOs? Where is the information? Where is the next step for where we are supposed to go with this? Right? Where is the next step here? So, you know, it makes me feel like you got to ask yourself, America seems to be the focus, even though we know UFOs are a global thing. The United States seems to be the focus of the conversation when it comes to the retrieval process. And A lot of people around the world are looking to the United States government to say to come out and say, "Hey, we have these craft." So, is it possible? And this is just a theory. Maybe you're right, maybe I'm wrong, and I'll look to you guys to see what you guys think about this. But is it possible that, and just hear me out on this, right? So we have this event which seems super climactic, which is the drone situation. It is at a time where in the United States we are going through a presidential administrative kind of switch, right? So part of this happens with our previous administration, which goes into the current administration that we have. Same event taking us into this. So we get promised that we're going to get the answers to this pretty much immediately. We get our new administration in. They give us the BS response from the White House press secretary saying that, oh, we know what they are, and the FAA approved these things to be up there, and let's move on. So we get that, and then we get, as far as the news cycle is concerned, bombarded, and it seems like daily, with so much distracting information coming out of this current administration regarding all these agenda issues that are being pushed that kind of don't leave any room or breath for anything else to come out, other than those things that are being talked about and focused on, right? And we won't get political, but I'm sure you watch the news, and if you have, you know of all the things that the news is packed with every day and have been for the last couple months here, right? So is it fair to say that because of this controversial, wild news that is coming out of this current administration daily, that it just is not that it's essentially affecting the UFO story or the ability to kind of move forward within our news cycle about covering what is going on within the UFO community? Is it possible that that's the reason why it seems like things have slown to a crawl? Is it fair to say? And I'll look to you guys for that because it feels like that's exactly what it is. Let's see. Okay, this is a few minutes back here. Maggie M10 is saying, I think that's control of the narrative tactic, though, isn't it? Give false information and muddy the waters to keep everyone confused to hide the truth, whether that be reverse engineering or ET. Yeah. Great Al, Mr. Hey Rob G, RG, Romeo Gamma. We are all of humankind. We all of humankind are psionic assets. That's a fact. Yeah, I believe so. Let's see. We have. Let's see. And I think this is a true statement. Maggie M10 is asking, how long has the word psionic been around? I've only started hearing it last couple of months. Gray Al answers back saying, Maggie M10, yes, unfortunately, those who sit at the top of the food chain in this fishbowl in which we exist never ever want us to know that we are within the fishbowl. That's true fact. That's true. Um, Goes on to say, because then we will begin to wander outside the fishbowl and explore waters where fish much bigger than our lofty castles will ever allow them to be, if only within the fishbowl. It's a great analogy. I've said it before. It's the same societal bubble, the society that they've manufactured, and they kind of want to keep us in that. Some of us have figured out a way to step outside that and look at that that bubble from the outside to understand that we are being contained and suppressed. So it's a great way to put that, gray owl. Let's see. Okay. All right. So yeah, so looking at that, that makes me feel like why the news maybe has slowed to a crawl. And here's another aspect of that, right? Because the news has been bombarded, with all this every day, something new and wild, something to take your attention away from not just UFOs, but anything else that you got going on in your life. If you allowed yourself to sit in front of the news daily, you would be bombarded and overwhelmed with things that are very stressful and things that that kind of take you out of the game for a minute, and you have to ask yourself, is that purposely being done? I don't know, that's more conspiratorial, but it makes more sense than to just think that all these things that are being put in the news are being done because a person really wants to kind of cover those things, right? It has to be one or the other. One sounds conspiratorial, but one sounds unbelievable that when you think about human beings, that they would allow for that to happen. But I think there's a little bit of that going on. And then the second part of that, you have to ask yourself this: being that we are seeing so much divide within our politics and just between our government really and humanity, the government and the citizens, the divide widening there, is is this something that affects whistleblowers, right? Does this make whistleblowers more uncomfortable with coming out with information? Because at this point, where we're at with it, if we go and take this Jake Barber, we take David Rush at face value, it's to say that if we had another whistleblower higher than that, it would be a whistleblower within the program, literally at the contractor, with hands on the craft, which is really, you can't go any higher than that when we talk about whistleblowing. So we're really right there. So if there is a whistleblower that's in that, you know, category, that's at a contractor that would be willing to come out, is what is being seen in politics currently, does that dissuade that person from even considering coming out? Because it's like, okay, I'm seeing the government, going after a lot of different sort of people that do things that the government thinks you shouldn't do. So in whistleblowing obviously would be considered something that the government wouldn't want you to do. So does that put that whistleblower now in a situation where they're like, I'm not coming out to say anything in this climate, and which means that we are maybe sitting in a dead spot, right, for the next 3 years before a whistleblower may feel comfortable enough to come out, being that they feel like the chances for reprisals or repercussions are probably a lot higher in this moment than they would be otherwise. Is that fair to think about, or to say? Because it seems like if I were a whistleblower, it would be something I would consider, or be considerate of. If I were to whistleblow and break the biggest story, that goes against what the government really wants me to do, would I do it while I have a government that is likely, very likely, to give reprisals, or kind of what do you call that? The word that I'm looking for, retaliate. To retaliate, that has a very high likelihood of retaliating against me if I were to come out and with this information. It just makes me concerned that that those two things are happening right now. So when we ask where are the UFOs, is it is it linked to the fact that we have currently an administration that is showing on a lot of different levels that they are willing to go after a lot of people and kind of be petty as far as who they go after and why they go after a particular person? Does that make a whistleblower now feel uncomfortable, coming out and taking that risk of exposing the story? Because if that is true, if any of that is true, and I would love to find out from someone in that whistleblower seat, or even talk to a whistleblower to say, hey, in this current climate, would you have come out now, like David Grush? Would you have come out now, still in this moment with the way things are? Because I think that has a lot to do with it. And if it's true, like I said, then that means we potentially could be in a dry spot for a you know a period of time as far as the government goes. But the good thing about that is that we already understand that disclosure shouldn't be coming from the government anyways. It comes from us. And we just I think it's more of a moment where, and in taking this time off, I was able to think about this. It's more of the reason why we have to leave the government out of the conversation when it comes to figuring out our path to disclosure. Because as long as we, which I never do, and I'm just saying this in general, but if we include the government in our path to disclosure, then there will that allows the governments around the world, not just ours, to have the ability to affect the way that disclosure goes or the path that disclosure takes if we allow them to be included in the conversation. So I think this is a moment when we're asking the question, where all the UFOs and why all the silence in the UFO community, that we take a moment to remember that they should not be included in the conversation. If we were to get something from the government, that would be cool, but it's not what we are dependent on. We just need to be more invigorated and more focused as the community. And let's get out there and get the data. Let's take it across the finish line ourselves. Let's figure out who these contractors are. Let's go get some signs and sit in front of these contractors outside of their fences, outside the perimeter. Let's go do things that from the community that we can control, that can kind of flush this situation out. I think that is like the moral of the story here, and kind of how we can make sure that there is no 3 years of dead time or downtime, and kind of control the narrative ourselves. And I think that's really the message here in what it is that we're talking about here. So let me go ahead and take a look at what else we had here. So the threat narrative, the threat narrative. This is what we'll cover on the next show. I was really thinking about the threat narrative, right? And the whole fact that the government is keeping the secret from us, and it's like, well, why? At the end of the day, there's always the thing that we think about is, why would they keep it a secret? Is it because they simply don't want to lose power? Is it simply because uh you know if if the truth comes out, then they have to tell the other truths about things that came out? And I just thought, pretty simply, could it be realistically a threat narrative? Could it be the fact that the government considers a UFO topic adverse to national security, which is some of the reasons why they say they don't want to release the a lot of the data that they have, because systems and things of that nature that could kind of show our hand. But you would have to look at it like this: if you're looking at adversarial nations, a lot of that stuff that they have, that our government has on adversaries, they don't release to the public. A lot of the data that they have on UFOs, they're not releasing to the public, and they don't do it because of logistics and the advantage that we want to have over our adversaries on the battlefield. And so, if you looked at that, could you put UFOs in that same subject, in that same conversation, based on the fact that they may have seen something in regards to these UFOs that puts them on the same list as adversarial nations, right? And is this a clue that they may consider UFOs a threat, right? So that'll be something that we'll cover on the next show here, kind of taking us into the next show. So I'll create the show for that, and we'll get into that conversation, because I think that's still a good thing to cover, right? Is that part of it. Let me go ahead and Look in the chat here before we get ready to wrap this up here. Um, let's see. Okay, Super Crazy Movie Geek, and thanks for coming in, Super Crazy Movie Geek. Shout out to you. Saying, wouldn't UFO disclosure be a great distraction to hide everything else going on? You would think so, Super Crazy, but it might. This is the way I think about that, right? I think if it would, I think it would actually probably solve a lot of that stuff, really. But it goes to that question of, do governments and superpowers continue to have a hold over the public the same way they currently do if they release the information, right? Because that's one of the angles. That's like the main angle, is that you know, especially the most powerful government in the world would be afraid of losing that power. The same way we saw in the Great Depression with people who lost money during the stock market crash. Money for them was power, right? So if you look at power, you see the effects of people who lose power overnight, and what happens to individuals like that. They don't, they look at it like everything is over, and they go to drastic measures would be another thing as well. So um yeah, I think this is the biggest thing on that could be put on a plate, is this story coming out. And I just feel like in that moment that, you know, the governments just don't want to lose the grip that they have over society, the system that has been working since before me and you were born, before most of us, actually all of us here, this society that we live in is kind of been constructed going back a bit now. So to break that down, right? Because otherwise, if disclosure never happens, then our great grandchildren and going on will all be born into this same system the same way we were. We just know we grew up in this. We went to school, we did this to set us up for work. We were put in the workforce. We worked all of these years. We retire, and then we get spit out the machine. And then they bring the new kid in and start the same process over, right? So I think they're afraid of that breaking down. Obviously, stock market crashes, all just a bunch of things that they benefit from would be affected immediately. So yeah, you would think that disclosure would be good, because it should be good for us as human beings, as humanity. But governments and businesses, and they don't, this is the last thing that they want to see happen. That's the fact. um Gray Owl, yes. Romeo Gamma RG, we need not follow their version of the truth. I cut feds loose years ago, and there's been awakening of profound implication when one begins to navigate via one's own intuitions. One finds oneself flying over many things, including flying directly over the woo woo nest where earthly fighter jets dare not go. I like that, Gray Owl. Appreciate that. And I agree. See, Scott Rosen, all we found out lately is we have drones that are both land and sea capable. They can swim and fly now. See, and that's the thing. I mean, we give our as human beings, I think we give ourselves too much credit, and we just assume that we have built things like this, which if we hadn't already known about the extraterrestrial presence, then yeah, okay, that's the only thing you could look at. It's like, okay, only human beings are here, and so we see what is being built, so we have to have built that, because there is no other entity here visiting or on this planet that could have built it, right? Except for human beings. So, in that aspect, then I could look at that and say, yeah, we had to build that craft, because no other way anything else or anyone else could did it. But because we know that there are more advanced beings here that are in more advanced craft, then you have to step back as a human being and say, we're not building the best stuff out there. We're not building these magical craft. It's very likely that these more advanced beings that are here in these advanced craft are the ones that are building this advanced stuff that we're seeing. That's the thing that makes sense, right? That's the thing that makes sense. Hillbilly Herb. I wish I had a whistle right now. I wish and I always say this. If you look back through history in big moments in humanity's past, there has always been this one person who had to step up above all their best judgment in order to do something to affect change. And sometimes they didn't make it. Sometimes they were unalive during the process, but there is always a one person that has to step out there and just say, I'm going to be the one to put it on the line. And I swear, if I was in that position, I had the ability to do it. If I was in that and I had the know, that I would do it. That's the kind of person I am. I would do it on behalf of other people. I would do it, right? I'd measure it out, obviously, as calculated as possible, but I would step out and do it. And I'm just hoping there's someone out there in those positions that feels that same way. It's like, you know what? Things will change after this. I don't think that they'll prosecute me. I think the world will be behind this thing that I'm about to do, and I think they'll stand behind me as I'm going through this process of the fight back and forth between the information I'm releasing versus what the government wants to do to me, right? And I think someone really sits down and thinks through that process and says, you know what, I'm going to do it for my grandchildren. I'm going to do it for my great grandchildren. That's just the hope that I have because I know if it were me, I would definitely do that. Let's see. What else do we have here? All right. Great Al. It's a bit of a journey for, I believe, each individual. The beginning of the process of discovery is allowing yourself permission to begin investigating into the fabric of reality, in my honest opinion. I Each of us will find answers if we take said path. It's all right there awaiting us. I'm with you 100%, Gray Owl. I mean, you're on my wavelength. That's the same way that I think as well. Super Crazy Movie Geek is saying, should we storm Area 51? Should we storm an area? Now, we don't need to go that far, but I bet you if we showed up at the spots, because they don't think that the public knows where these things are being kept. So if we showed up one day, a group with picket signs outside of the perimeter in a legal place to be, not violating anything or crossing any lines. But if we showed that, hey, we know where these craft are, right? Then I think that shakes things up as they start to realize, okay, wow, yeah, the government obviously knows where they are. The question is, are they doing anything about it? Are they going to these facilities? But if the public knew where these things were and showed up with these signs and protest and saying, hey, show us the craft, and this was a daily thing, that would kind of make things a little spicy, right? So that's somehow we have to get that information and go out there, not violating anything though, right? Let me see. Okay. Monica, desperation makes us all possible of anything. Yeah. I mean, like I said, we're in a moment where humanity could go left or right. And it depends on how engaged we are as humanity, because the government will just steamroll the narrative and take it any way they want it to go. We know the way they want it to go. They want to keep things as they are. the same structure, uh, for monetary gain, for power reasons. They're not going to take it in a direction that's the most benefit for humanity. So this is why it's so important for us as human beings that care about each other to kind of steer where this goes. And you're just hoping that there's that person involved in these programs that taps into their human side and says, you know what, I side with humanity versus keeping this a secret, for these government entities that really don't have the best interest in heart of the citizens. I side with the citizens in humanity because that's who I am, right? That is what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping happens. Maggie M10, honestly, this whole thing just has me confused. It seems that this is a significant risk, perhaps even to life, if you get anywhere near what is really going on. Then again, fear is also powerful. Bing. That's exactly what they count on to keep you quiet. And that's why it's going to take that person that understands that and says, you know what? The risk to myself, because the fear may just be a ploy, right? Whereas if you come out with the information, you'll find that the things you thought they could do to you, they really can't do because of the impact of said information to the awareness of everyone else. So if everyone is, so the police, right? We know there's corruption there in some levels. Most are great people, but there's definitely a level of corruption. So if they take you in an alley and beat you up or threaten to do that, you'll probably cooperate. If you're in front of 1,000 people and they take you into custody, they're going to be really more nice. They're not going to display that want to to pump fear into you, right? They're not going to show that, and that's kind of what that is, right? Because the people won't allow it, and that's the kind of what I mean. Like, if the focus of everyone's attention is on this person that came out with this information, it's going to be very hard to instill that fear into that person going forward, which is kind of the thing that I hope the people who have the information understand that, hey, you're not by yourself. You are currently in your program, but once you step out onto the public side and everyone is now focused on you and you're bringing this information out, that it's going to be a lot harder for things to happen to you or any of those fear tactics to work on you now that you have the world's attention, right? So that's the thing that I think will work out for the person that does come out with the information, but we'll have to wait and see. And let me see here. Um Maggie M10 said, I just don't know. Clear as mud. Yeah. Great Al, but it all awaits us, no one stopping any individual from learning the nature of reality and establishing comms with X-rays, aka others, except the individual who does not allow themselves. Monica, working for the man, blah blah blah. Yeah, I got you there. Bigfoot, Littlefoot, where are the UFOs? Just simply ask them to show up. They will, really close up, not high altitude, blink lights more than 1,500 feet. And that's more of a rhetorical question. When I'm saying where are the UFOs, they're there every day. And that's what we know. We know that they haven't gone anywhere. They're there every day. But where are the UFOs as far as the information coming out within the community about UFOs? Like, we know they're still there, but what is stopping us from being able to focus on that information is more of the angle of that question. And I think we kind of covered that here tonight. But thank you for your comment. Super crazy movie geek. Will the UFO tech, including free energy, be monetized? They will attempt to, but once again, I think when the information comes out, it's going to be so groundbreaking that if we allow them to stay in their positions going forward, which I think is a real possibility that we can affect if they do or don't going forward. Because as if all human beings on this planet come together, we get to decide if we are going to be governed or not, or how that's going to go. That's going to be up to us, right? And there's some aspects of governing that are good, and there are definitely some that don't benefit humanity. So my envision is that we'll be able to sit at a table, kind of work out how we want these details to go, and kind of make huge changes as far as humanity goes, the whole power structure going forward. That is the hope. And I think the moment will be big enough if we can get everyone's attention at one time. That's why slow drip disclosure is not beneficial, because slow drip disclosure is how you let a couple people know at a time, except for getting everyone's attention at once, which is the thing they don't want to do, because with everyone's attention on the same thing at once, then now that's the best time for us to be able to make changes. But if we just let a few people know here, a few people know there, a few people know there, and take that slow drip approach, then we won't be able to kind of rally everyone together at one time. So that's why governments want the slow drip approach versus catastrophic disclosure, which I'm a fan of, which is where, hey, boom, we lay on the table, everybody knows right now, because they won't be able to control what happens next. Let's see. Monica, I find it sad because I found when I tell people about aliens, conspiracy theory, any woo, that they really don't care. They're so distracted by, say, the government. Yeah, yeah, that is true. And that's exactly what I think is happening right now. Why we're asking the question, where are the UFOs? Why is there silence in the community? Because of exactly what you just said there, Monica, for sure. Um, let's see. Trying to bring these comments current. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Gray out. The slow drip IV disclosure is a parlor trick. It leads us to believe that we do not have reality until they provide it. Yeah. Yeah. And then it's just, you'll have a group of people that are already so comfortable with it that it's not really, they've moved on with life and they've just continued on. And then as you do this layer by layer by layer, when you get to the end where you've disclosed to everyone, it's not a big deal. And it's like, hey, let's keep the power structure that we have. Let's just keep moving forward. And that's what they want at the end of the day. So we got to do things to stop it. But like I said, on the next show, what we're going to do is we are going to take a look at the threat narrative, right? Is the fact that the government considers the UFO topic adverse to national security a clue that they may consider UFOs a threat? There's a lot of people that want to talk against the UFO threat narrative. I'm not one of those. I think you should be prepared on both sides, because if there are multiple species, like some people say, I don't know that there is or isn't, because I haven't seen any myself. I've seen the UFOs, the ones that I've recorded that you've seen, 47 objects in the sky at one time that all disappeared. So I know they're there. I don't know how many species are there, but if there are multiple species, you got to look at it just like humans. There has to be a group, some good, some bad, and it's just a question on the government, their engagement with these things. As we know, there's been the pilot in Turkey back in the 70s engaged one of these UFOs, shot at it in his jet, and there were repercussions of that. You had Tom DeLonge. I know some people don't like, but Tom DeLonge came out and talked about in Italy, where these UFOs have been shooting high energy weapons onto the shore and kind of setting houses on fire. The military there, I'm gonna say military. I don't know if it was essentially military, but they got on the helicopter because they saw where it was coming from out on the water. They go out towards where this is all happening on the water, and a UFO, a USO, pops up out the water, shoots the helicopter, and then goes back down into the water. So there are aspects of this being a threat narrative. Fred Valentic is another one who was on his radio while flying and said there's a UFO there essentially. And then all of a sudden you heard this loud metallic scraping noise and he was never heard from again. So there are signs that, these things may not be here for the best reasons. We'll be looking into that. And then the fact on if the government may actually know exactly what it is that we're talking about. And is that the reason why? Because they may be in active engagement with these things. We know that there are military jets usually seen right after every sighting. Why? Is it why? Right? And not just military craft, but craft that are capable of engaging in adversarial craft. So, yeah, something to think about, but we'll be getting into that and a lot more as we get ready to end this show. As we've talked about the where are the UFOs. I think you understand where we're coming from with that. That being said, we'll go ahead and get ready to wrap this thing up right here on the definitive UFO news show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. It's been a pleasure, guys, hanging out here. Don't forget, we do have social bits coming soon, which will be pre-recorded short form content. Now that we're back in the saddle here, like I said, it's definitely good to kind of take a break from the subject. And even with you as viewers, you kind of sometimes have to, step away because if you're personally engaged with this topic, like a lot of us are, because we care how this affects us and how this affects, our children, our descendants, our grandchildren down the line, then this can become overwhelming, to on top of all the other things that you have to deal with in life. So take it slow, take a break when you need to. I'll let you know we got all our shows coming back here. I'm actually scheduling somebody for uh, my experience with the phenomena, which we haven't done in this new program yet, but we will be doing. I'm going to book a guest so we can go ahead and just get that out the way. Also, the social dig. You see the way this software is a little wonky is the reason why I haven't done the actual social dig show. Because there's so many transitions that happen in that I just know there's going to be an issue there. So I'll do a test run behind the scenes and see if I can get it to be kind of smooth because I don't like all this herky jerky stuff that's happening with this new program. So we'll test that out. But that show is also coming back. Also, this show you already know is the definitive UFO news show, and we'll be back to talk about the UFO threat narrative and also the late night call-in show, which we may do this weekend. I'm still on the fence about that. Keep an eye out for that. Also, if this is your first time here, definitely make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification bell next time we go live because we are back, baby. We are back in the building here. And with that being said, um, do want to thank our members because memberships are available. If you didn't know, you click the description under the video. There's a link there to go ahead and join. It helps make this a better show and get better software and equipment so we can make this thing go smooth. But we always, commit to raising the bar here on this channel. So we'd love to see you back if this is your first time. Also, take a moment before the show is over, please, and hit the like button. That does something to the algorithm. I'm still not 100% sure what it does, but it's supposed to be positive and it kind of makes things gets this show out there more. I want to thank Monica for your support of the show tonight. Keep the shows coming. I will definitely do that because I'm reinvigorated, I'm recommitted. And even if we don't have UFO news, there's still a lot that we could talk about. We'll be doing that here. So I do appreciate you, Monica. Thanks so much for your love and support. And outside of that, let me see what else do I have for you here. Shout out to the members. We have Ann Joanne, the Beekeeper, Dina Unley, Maggie M10, Flat 6, Miss Catherine Jones, Cosme Joe Chronicles, Wes W. Decker, Still Pooh 69, Polly Rodderman, Lil Camp 51, Frankie B, Fast Hemi. We appreciate your love support for the show. Also, as you know or may not know, we do have social swag. We have the social shop right here at the Social Dig. I have a commercial that I put together for that. So we will run that and we will attempt to get up out of here. Here we go. Welcome to the Social Shop, courtesy of the Social Dig. I am Mr. Rob G, and we are bringing you exclusive gear, and tonight's no different. We have humanity t-shirts, the positive progression of humanity. Yes, you can go out into the world and proudly show everyone what humanity means to you. $32.99. And remember, if you're a social soldier, you get an additional 20% off the price. That's right. Being a social soldier gets you an additional 20% off. And keep in mind, depending where you are in the world, shipping fees and taxes will be applied. Bringing you exclusive gear right here at the Social Shop on the Social Dig.